Hey guys, welcome to the last video on the topic of investments and loans. So this is the last idea we need to go over on your timeline before you're ready for test revision. So the idea is interest-only loans. Well, there's two basic ideas, but they sort of come together. Interest-only loans and sinking funds. So to get into what interest-only loans are, in all the loans that we've done so far, so we start off with personal. We had those payment terms on items like cars or electronics, and then home loans. The regular payments you've been making, which are PMT, they've all been paying off both the principal and the interest continually until there's nothing left to pay for, or until the debt is paid. Now, the idea of interest-only loans are an option for investors to reduce their regular payments, make it easier week to week or month to month. And how does that happen? Well, with these kind of loans, well, it doesn't have to be home loans, it can be any type of interest-only loan. You only actually pay the interest with your regular repayments during the loan term. But then you're expected to pay off the principal right at the end in one go. So interest-only loan is an example of simple interest. Okay, it's simple because you're not paying off the principal with each repayment each time, and you can go back and use this formula which we did at the start of the term, well actually at the start of investments and loans, that we all know and love. So just be wary, the formula that I've used is SI is equal to P times by R times by T, and I've told you the interest rate should be a decimal. The interest rate is a percentage, so as a decimal you divide it by 100. You'll probably see in the book the formula SI is equal to PRT all over 100. That's exactly the same as my formula, because my formula, you've converted R to a decimal anyway, so you already have divided by 100, makes no difference. So let's have a go at an interest-only loan question. Here we have an interest-only loan, $10,000, set up with an interest charged at 9% per annum over 3 years. The interest-only repayments will be made monthly, and principal, like we said, has to be paid back right at the end of the 3 years. What are you going to pay with a monthly interest-only payment? Well, you're going to use the SI is equal to PRT formula. Alright, so P was the principal, $10,000, times by the rate as a decimal, so 9%, so 0.09, times by the time in years. So if you wanted to make a shortcut here, it's asking for what is the monthly interest-only repayment. Okay, so if T is the time in years, and you wanted to know what the monthly interest-only repayment is, well, you could just go times by a 12th. Okay, divide or all of that times by 1 divided by 12, and you'd get the answer to this straight away. So if I chuck that in the calculator, it'd be 10,000 times by 0.09 times by 1 over 12. That'll give you $75. Okay, if you don't like that shortcut, if you prefer to work out with no shortcuts, well, you'd go SI equals PRT, which is going to be 10,000 times by 0.09. Alright, now if you want to think logically about it, it's going to be 3 years. So let me just indicate that that's the shortcut. It's only asking for monthly repayment, so that's why you do the month worth. Okay, but if you want to do it the long way, so this will tell you the simple interest you pay for the 3 years, 10,000 times by 0.09 times by 3. That's 2,700 interest for the whole 3 years, but then you're trying to work out the monthly payment, or how many months has it been. 3 years times by 12, 36 months. So it's going to be 2,700, the total amount paid, divided by the 36 months to work out how much you pay per month, and hopefully that works out to, yes, the same thing. Okay, so if you don't like that shortcut idea, you can go with that. Some people might find that more logical. Okay, so that is working out what the monthly interest-only repayment is for an interest-only loan. Now we get to the idea of sinking funds. And just remember, with an interest-only loan, yeah, you're paying a lot less per regular payment, so here it's monthly, because you're only paying for the interest. But remember again that you have to pay back that principal in one go right at the end. So you might think right now, why would you want to go through an interest-only loan when the point of a loan is to avoid making a big lump sum payment by making small little payments on it to the lender? But what generally will happen, you'll find, is that a lot of investors will set up a sinking fund, which is a savings account where they make regular repayments that generate interest on top of it until it grows to the principal that you need at the end of that interest-only loan. So basically setting up two things. And this this account where you're putting money into and it's compounding, well, that's an example of future value annuity, which you did at the beginning of the topic. Okay, so if I can summarize this process, because it was difficult for the guys last year to sort of understand why there was these two different parts to it. People will often set up an interest-only loan because it's easier to pay off each regular payment, okay, smaller payments. But in recognition of the fact you need to pay the principal off right at the end in one go, they'll set up a savings account, which it's a sinking fund, which is where you put money in regularly and it compounds, okay? And they'll set it up in such a way that that sinking fund will grow to be exactly the amount of the principal that you need to pay at the end of the interest-only loan. Okay, so you set up a second thing to pay off the first thing. Also, there's an extra thing to think about here. When you're talking about sinking funds, there's the idea of the book value of the debt. Okay, you say in this example, you owe $10,000. You're going to pay off that principal at the end. All you're doing is paying off the interest during the loan. You're going to pay off that $10,000 at the end. And what have you set up to pay that off? Well, you set up a sinking fund. And there's the idea of book value of the debt, which is the difference between that sinking fund where you're slowly putting money into the account and it's compounding, is the difference between the sinking fund and the original debt in the first place. So let's sort all this out. It might be a bit of a whirlwind for you right now, but if we do an example, it should all bring it together, okay? So our example above was that $10,000 interest-only loan that was set up, going for 3 years, and this person's going to have to pay $10,000 back right at the end because all they've been doing is paying for interest over the life of the loan. So they set up a sinking fund with monthly deposits, and they got a rate of 6.9% compounding monthly. What are you going to be paying into that sinking fund to make sure that you have $10,000 ready to go? Okay, strictly speaking, you shouldn't say repayments because that's for loans. Okay, a sinking fund is a future value annuity, so you're making payments into the sinking fund. All right. So this is a TVM solver question because it's a future value annuity. You're trying to solve for payments, okay? It's asking for what the monthly payments are going to be into the sinking fund if you want it to grow to 10,000. So we'll set up the TVM, I% PV, PMT, FV, PY, and CY. And just take notes of future value unity, so you will use PMT as end on your calculator. Okay, so it's compounding monthly and you're making monthly repayments, so PY and CI both are going to be 12. It's going for 3 years with those 12 payments per year, so it's going to be 36. And the interest rate of this sinking fund is 6%. It doesn't say anything about them putting money, a large chunk of money in right at the start of the sinking fund, so PV is going to be 0. We're solving for PMT, and we've decided that we want to pay off that interest-only loan, so we need the money to grow to $10,000 by the end of those 3 years. So we're just working out how much we need to put into this account, this sinking fund, every month to grow to $10,000 at the end of 3 years. So we'll chuck that in the calculator. FV of 10,000. Alpha solve on PMT, and that tells you it's going to be 254.22, 2 decimal places. Therefore, monthly payments into sinking fund will be $254.22. Alright, so that's how a sinking fund works. That money it grows to, that $10,000, will be used to pay off the principal on the interest-only loan, okay, because they've only been paying interest through the home loan term. But one thing to remember here is that this future value annuity is generating interest. So if you have a look, you've made, you've made 36 payments of $254.22. 254.22 times by 36. You paid $9,151.92 to end up with $10,000. So interest you made was the future value annuity formula for interest, which was FV minus PMT times by N. Remember, it's slightly different formula to the loans interest formula. Okay, and so that difference between $9,151.92 and that $10,000 is the interest that you made. That gets taxed. Okay, interest made is income, so it's taxed. So a lot of your questions will just completely ignore that fact. You'll have to be aware of that assumption, or it's not reasonable. You'd have to think about that in real life. Okay, so that is just one last little point to think about when you're talking about the sinking funds. All right, because it's a future value annuity, it's generating interest. That would ordinarily be taxed. So that is a example of a sinking fund, working out what the regular repayments are for that. That is basically the last thing that you need to go over. Do your exercises, finish off that timeline, and you can get going on that investments and loans practice test. Alright, so I will see you on whatever the next video is.